I'm with Ilana Heideman from Israel Forever Foundation, and it's the holiday we're talking about today is Shavuot. What is Shavuot?
Hi, Paul. Thanks again for having me and an opportunity to share one of our Shalosh Regalim, one of our three pillar holidays. We have Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot. Shavuot is the holiday that has two particular significance. One, it is actually a harvest festival when we bring our first fruits to the temple. But more importantly, the day is known as Yom Matan Torah, the day of the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. So this holiday celebrates when Moses comes down from the mountain and brings the Torah to the Jewish people. And together the Jewish people resound, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, we will hear, and Chazak, Chazak v'nitchazek, stronger, stronger, and we will be strong. And I think that this holiday embodies for us the ideals that the Torah brings to Jewish life and identity and reminds us every year of our marriage to this beautiful book of life that God has given us.
What does Shavuot mean in Hebrew?
It actually means, the word means weeks because it's considered the festival of weeks, the counting of which begins on Passover, and the time period in between is called the Omer. And during this period, there is a counting every single day from the beginning of Passover all the way until Shavuot, where in the synagogue they announce every morning, and in personal prayers you recite the count every single day. Today is this day of the Omer, meaning we were released from slavery. We were rescued from slavery by Yetziat Mitzrayim, coming out of Egypt and being saved at the hand of God. And on Shavuot, we then receive the hand of God again with the receipt of this blessed Torah and the promises that he makes to the people of Israel, including the blessing of the land of Israel.
This is a biblical holiday. Do you have to come to Jerusalem to celebrate this?
It does. It does include a pilgrimage to Jerusalem as a part of the ancient traditions. Nowadays, in the religious community, you do see lots of movement towards Shavuot and celebrating in that sense at our most holy places, such as the hope would be that the Jews would be allowed to pray at the Temple Mount, which is, of course, the holiest of holies for the Jewish people. But we are forced only to be able to pray at our holy retaining wall, the Western Wall, the Kotel. So many people gather there, but a very unique tradition of Shavuot is the all-night learning of Torah. So we stay up all night learning Torah in different groups and in large and small and in families, young and old, learning as much as they can as a way of celebrating the sweetness of this beautiful holiday.
There are specific Bible verses that the people read during Shavuot.
I think that there are some books that are emphasized, and there's that are, I know that we read, some people read the Book of Ruth, and some people read Shir HaShirim, the Solomon's story is love story with the love story between God and the Jewish people and the land. But I think that there's also a way in Shavuot that people try to find to dissect current events through the lens of Torah, which is something that we are seeing especially now for the Shavuot post October 7th. We're seeing how
Mhm.
people are weaving together the ancient lessons and the biblical meaning into even discussions about, for example, the issues of harvest and agricultural dilemmas being faced by all of Israel's farmers, both on our southern and our northern borders. So there's a lot of unique discussion that we see starting to happen about Shavuot this year.
How long is the holiday?
In Israel, holidays are generally one day. It starts in the sundown of the night before and ends sundown the following night. But in the diaspora, it is 2 days, as with almost all of the Jewish holidays, it is this way, because in the diaspora in the ancient times, they wanted to always be sure to know when the holiday was actually ending and not to miss out, but also the added day is a reflection of being distant from the land. So in Israel, it is a 1 day holiday, and in the diaspora, it is a 2 day holiday. And just for clarification, Rosh Hashanah is the one, our new year of the Jewish calendar, is the one holiday where it is 2 days, both in Israel and the diaspora. So just a little tidbit of information for you there.
Are there any special foods that you eat during this time?
Yeah, we focus a lot on milk and honey. We focus a
Mm.
lot on dairy products, and we have the infamous Israeli cheesecake recipe challenges of who's going to make the best cheesecake. And blintzes is an old tradition for Shavuot. You also have a Sephardi tradition that's called the Mount Sinai cake, and it has a ladder. It's like designed in a way of a ladder. People make their challah sometimes in the shape of a ladder as the rungs of achievement of our receiving the Torah and God coming down. People will also have just layers of sweetness and salty together. And again, it's a reminder of the land of milk and honey and all of the sweetness that God has brought into our lives by giving us the Torah.
You mentioned earlier about the first fruits, and we've just seen 4 hostages released. Are you hoping and praying that these are the first fruits of what we're going to see something bigger further on down the line?
Oh, it's such a beautiful way of looking at it. Yes, but as we say, from your mouth to God's ear, that we should see all of our hostages released, even those who we know have been murdered in captivity or whose bodies were abducted when they were already not alive, having been murdered on October 7th. We want to see every single one of them returned to their families, returned to their homes, and given the respect that they deserve as human beings who were forced into captivity under brutal, brutal conditions. So let this be the first of many miracles. We are really witnessing miracles in our time, simultaneous to seeing tragedies and to feeling very intense pain, confusion, and even fear with what we see happening around the world. There are many who are looking at the pro-terror rallies that are taking place in Toronto, in London, Washington, D.C., in front of the White House. We are seeing more and more people openly call for murder, rape, to bring jihad and intifada to every corner of the world. And it is very important that we see that the first fruits could also be embodied by the first fruits of hope that we need to give to the world to say, you can fight this. There are ways to counter this spread of extremism, and the hope that we have of a rescue mission that was that miraculous. Maybe that's a part of those, first fruits of a renewal of hope that we want to see for everybody in Israel and all of the peace-loving people around the world who support Israel and our fight for justice and against terror.
Will there be joy this year? During Shavuot, we've seen the release of the 4 hostages, but there's still many, many, many more hostages in Gaza. So will it still be a bit of a bittersweet time?
Yeah, I think that every holiday that we have right now is kind of subdued out of not only out of the atmosphere of the country and of the people, everywhere, but also out of respect for the bereaved families. We saw that for Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. We even saw it on Lag BaOmer, is the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer that I mentioned. These are 7 weeks, Shavuot, Shiva Shavuot, that are in between Passover and the holiday. And on this 33rd day, there is, during the massacre of Jews in Jerusalem, Rabbi Akiva was one of the great sages of the Jewish people. And his students were dying from a major plague. And so all of a sudden, every day, students were dying. And all of a sudden, on this 33rd day of the Omer, no students died. And it was believed that that miraculous day should be remembered because it was also on that day they believed that the fires of Bar Kokhba's rebellion against the Romans also were reignited, and the Jewish resistance to the siege on Jewish freedom was reignited by that hope. So even though these events actually take place in different generations, there's a connection between them in that we as a Jewish nation look to our calendar and look to our history to give us inspiration today. So even though Lag BaOmer usually is a really big celebration with the burning of bonfires and gatherings, this year that too was also subdued. So I know that Shavuot will as well be more of a time of introspection, of learning Torah, of trying to understand the many faces of Torah, because nowadays we're seeing also more people post October 7th are looking to Torah in a new and different light. Maybe they aren't religious. Maybe they've never read the Bible. We at Israel Forever, actually, we started a program called Know Torah so that we could try to be sharing with those who wanted their first taste and they're not interested maybe in religion and maybe they're not sure how they believe in God. Maybe they're not sure about prayer, but the Torah is a blueprint for history and for humanity. And there's so much to be learned from it. So I think that this Shavuot, again, it will be very introspective for many people. Families will gather. There will be an atmosphere that is bittersweet, salty sweet, the tears that we cry, and our beautiful sweetness of our land giving us a source of hope. And I know that sounds for people who live outside of Israel, maybe it doesn't make sense for them, but whatever country somebody is from, you have your nationality and you have your religion, you have your, maybe you have your ethnicity or race, whatever label you give yourself. When it comes to the Jews, it's not as easily categorized because the Jews are an am in the Bible. We become a nation. We become a nation of the children of Israel. And that nationhood, it really starts to take shape with each one of the historical events. And on Shavuot, the nation comes alive through the giving of this blueprint for life, for hope, even with its many stories of sadness, destruction, and pain. And that's how we have to live today. So many people are looking to rediscover their roots. I personally have been talking with people, Jewish and non, who are looking to learn more, to try to understand more. I had one woman say to me, maybe in my ancestry, I'm Jewish. I feel this need to connect. And I said to her, it isn't a matter of whether or not you're Jewish. It's do you feel that part of your soul that helps you understand, respect, and love the Jews, Jewish tradition, Jewish faith, Jewish culture, and yes, the integrity and beauty of the Jewish land of Israel. So it's a very interesting holiday we're coming up to at a really interesting time because we are still living in war and we want to continue our prayers for the end of this war and for peace for Israel and all people everywhere.
Of course, the whole world should be really, really thankful to the Jews, shouldn't they? Because you received the Torah, and a lot of the world respects the Ten Commandments, which we live by. And these are very, very important for the whole world, isn't it?
Absolutely. Do you think that the whole world appreciates it?
Mm,
Do we think
no.
that there's an appreciation? What have we learned, right? What did we learn from the Holocaust? Somebody asked me recently, and there's a big debate as to have we actually learned anything. My mentor, Elie Wiesel, even in the last years of his life, he questioned, what have we actually learned? What has the world learned? So your question is an apropos one. What has the world learned about the gifts of the Jews to human civilization, not only to a religious element, but to humanity as a whole? I do think that there should be a greater level of respect bestowed upon Jews and the Jewish people. But the level of confusion that people have over why Jews are so different, unfortunately, maybe dissipates the amount of respect that is actually given or the amount of understanding that is gifted, because at the end of the day, in the current context, if we make the connection, we see that people will believe any lie about Israel, even though it is so astoundingly proven with evidence that that lie is not true. They will still believe it. And part of that stems from their lack of appreciation for the Jews and the gifts of the Jews to the world and the gifts of God, giving the Jews, the Jewish nation, giving us This, again, is it a gift? Is it a curse? To be the nation whose suffering is supposed to be a lesson for everyone else, to be a light unto the nations through our suffering is a heavy burden to bear. But I do think that it would be wonderful to see more people gain better appreciation for just how instrumental the Jewish nation is and the Torah to helping sustain good for all humanity.
Is Shavuot a happy holiday? And what sort of things will you see on the street?
I don't know if you see much on the street. People do dress in white. They dress in white just like we do on many of our holidays when we are demonstrating purity, and they're gathering in families. They'll be playing. It is a holiday like the Sabbath in Israel where there's no public transportation and stores are closed. So you'll see people wandering more openly in the street, but a lot of them will be inside in their Beit Midrash, their houses of study, the synagogues, or people's private homes for learning. So I think that during the day on Shavuot, you'll see a lot of people out having their family picnic and again, doing what we can to remember that the Jewish people are people who celebrate life. And even when those who seek to wipe us off the face of the earth celebrate their love for death, I'm sure that you've seen the many testimonies of those, the Palestinian Arab Muslims and their supporters who are claiming that they thirst for death the way that the Jews thirst for life. They have babies so that they can become martyrs. They pray for their children at their birth that they become martyrs who will sacrifice their life by killing Jews. What a dichotomy that we are living in. Two different ideas, and yet the Jews will never, ever stop loving life. And the Jews will never stop doing whatever possible to celebrate, even in moments of very painful despair. For those who saw the hostages released, some very rude criticism talks about how they're all smiling. And there's been even some of the medical reports of the conditions of the hostages have indicated that they have very intense Stockholm syndrome. Stockholm syndrome, for those who don't know, is the idea that you identify with your captors and you rationalize their logic of their abuse on you. We see this in many different contexts, but for hostages in particular, it's a very well-known occurrence. This empathy toward the terrorists, towards the people who were abusing them. And I think that we have to work very hard to make sure that the distortions of those smiling faces coming home from captivity after more than 8 months, I think it's important that we identify their humanity, that we always remember those people we are seeing on a screen. They're just like me, they're just like you, and it could be our daughter or our family member or our son. It could be our father. There's a father who was released from captivity, who was at the party, and he got to see his wife and his daughters, and you see the photos of his tears pouring out. We must tap into every essence of our own empathic potential so that we do not redirect our hearts only towards victims in Gaza, which is a manipulation being brought about by these very well-oiled propaganda machines who are fueled by the hate and the desire to destroy Israel, Jews, and the Jewish people. So Shavuot, may this year Shavuot remind us that all of our good and every generation we have witnessed Amalek, we have witnessed those who seek to destroy us, but all of our good stems from our core, our essence, from the receiving the Torah, from the respect for the land, the giving of the first fruits in our holy temple in Jerusalem, which is where that gold dome stands today. And one day, of course, we as Jews pray for the return of the Messiah and the establishment of our third and final temple of God, where all Jews, it is said in the Torah, where all people, not just Jews, will be welcome in my house of prayer, so that there will be peace for all mankind. And that's a prayer we should all be praying for.
What is your prayer for Shavuot this year?
I hope this year that Shavuot is a time of family get-togethers that are reminders of our love for our tradition. Because there are many in the Jewish people who aren't necessarily observant, Shavuot is not as obviously celebrated in their home. My hope would be for more people to understand the significance of Jewish heritage and tradition that has been carried down for these 30, almost 3,900 years since we received the Torah on Mount Sinai on this day. That if we pass it down to our children and to our children's children, and that our prayers are heard, then we remind people that prayers are valuable and that prayers have power, and that maybe our prayers can be heard by hostages and by those who are indeed capable of forcing the terror regimes to collapse and to stop the reign of tyranny on all of us everywhere. And so I hope for, it sounds so cliche to say we hope for world peace because it's empty, but I do certainly hope that on this Shavuot we might hear again of another miracle. We might come together with family and friends. We might find a way to have a hopeful conversation, and we might find a way to make some sort of an impact with our love of Torah and our love of hope so that we can do more the next day and the day after that and the day after that. Our fight is ongoing. As long as there are those who want to destroy Israel and the Jewish people, we will have to keep this fight going. So we look forward to seeing how many more miracles we can witness in our time.
Your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Oh, yes. Please do come, read, engage. There are activities, there are crafts, there's recipes, and there's, of course, the global virtual community of virtual citizens of Israel where you can activate your voice as a leader, as an ambassador. IsraelForever.org. Make sure to come and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And we look forward to engaging all of you in your homes and in your hearts with a love, understanding, and respect for Israel as the Jewish people and our sovereign Jewish homeland.
Elana, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you, Paul. It's a wonderful opportunity to know that there are people out there listening to you and your voice and open to hearing the truth so that they can spread the truth onward. So thank you again, Paul, for the opportunity.